Hi folks, it's Gary here and a warm welcome to the latest video here on the Fourth Official's YouTube channel. It is great to see you and we're joining you 24 hours after the Rangers AGM and where the Rangers board were up on stage at Glasgow's SEC Armadillo outlining the business plans for the year ahead, talking through some of the numbers and the most recently released accounts. And I think it's fair to say it's been a board that's found itself under significant pressure over the course of the last 6 months after a series of questionable business decisions that have, in combination with the team floundering at the start of season 24-25, led to quite the atmosphere in and around Ibrox and the Rangers support. So I'm going to talk you through some of the main headlines coming out of the AGM yesterday, but for full analysis, including an interview with one of the Rangers shareholders that was in attendance at the SEC Armadillo yesterday, you can join us over on our Patreon channel. It's www.patreon.com/the Fourth Official. And whilst you're there, you can sign up and give the gift of the Fourth Official for Christmas by buying a yearly membership. That gives you access to all of our podcasts, our articles, our comments, our features, all for less than £2 a month. We'd be delighted to see you over there. One of the main headlines coming out of the AGM yesterday was Chief Finance Officer James Taylor, who spoke about the much discussed player trading model and how that it hasn't worked properly for Rangers in over 10 years, citing only 1 year where Rangers turned a significant profit from it. That was the year where Calvin Bassey was sold to Ajax for upwards of £20 million, having been bought for a fairly nominal fee from Leicester on that cross-border loophole. Now, it's fair to say nowhere near that level of incoming transfer fees this summer, with the news that only £800,000 was brought in with the sale of 5 first-team players in the summer, very much with the intention of getting them off the wage bill. So Connor Goldson, Todd Cantwell, Robbie McCrory, Sam Lammers, and kind of many others that obviously left the Rangers wage bill in the summer through the kind of freedom of contract, the likes of John Lundstrom, Kemar Roof, Ryan Jack, Borna Barisic, all of which have contributed to Rangers' overall annual wage bill being decreased by £6 million from £41 million a year down to £35 million a year. Now, whether or not that's being shown in terms of value on the park for that 35 million very much remains to be seen. The manager was in attendance and obviously cited the fact that a good performance against Kilmarnock on Wednesday night on the eve of the AGM certainly wasn't to be seen as signs of success, and it needs to be kind of long-term better performances on the park, which will then hopefully lead to more financial prosperity off the park. Niels Coppin added to James Taylor's statement regarding the kind of state of the Rangers squad and that slashing of the wage bill, and spoke an awful lot about how Rangers wanted to create value on the park and the dressing room through recruitment principles to be a winning Rangers and to create a young and dynamic team to win and also to compete in Europe with a need for players who are robust and technical. So those kind of key principles that were seen in the summer was to reduce that average age of the squad. And a slide that was put up on the stage yesterday stated that the average age of the squad went from 29.7 years down to 23.5, and that's obviously one of the kind of key principles of what Niels Coppin and Philippe Clement are wanting to try and do with the Rangers footballing department. And you can see that from the recruitment of players like Hefty, Hamza Igaman. They're looking obviously in fairly untapped markets to try and find rough diamonds that can be polished up and then sold on for a profit elsewhere, and seeing players like Nico Rashkin starting to return to form, another player who was brought in for a relatively low fee that potentially could be flipped to a big money sale in the future if he carries on his trajectory. That's very much got to be the kind of player trading model that the Rangers look to try and do, to try and obviously help buffer the accounts, especially in years where there isn't any Champions League money, because the difference between obviously being in the Champions League and being in the Europa League or even the Conference League is stark. So in seasons where it's unlikely that Rangers are going to win the league, as this season is looking likely, then those additions to the accounts have to come from moving players on and moving players on at the top of the curve, where we can get the best value for them. And examples like Alfredo Morelos and Ryan Kent, who were big assets that ended up leaving the club for zero money, signs that that model has failed drastically in the past and needs to improve now. Was cited that there's money to be spent in January through the transfer window. Where that is spent and how that is spent, it's going to be very interesting to watch and see what Philippe Clement does. That's presuming, of course, that he remains in a job. And one of the questions from the floor yesterday was around why Philippe Clement was given a year's extension in the summer, where he was very early in his project. And John Gilligan mentioned the fact of the Rangers board wanted to try and show support to the Philippe Clement project, and whether or not that remains to be seen as successful or not this week ahead is going to be very pivotal in terms of how that goes. A game at Dingwall at the weekend, followed by Spurs at Ibrox in Europa League next Thursday night, and then the big Premier Sports Cup final against Celtic next weekend. Heavy defeats in a few of those games, and it could be a very different story for Philippe Clement and the Rangers management side. However, if we were to carry on some of the successes from the Kilmarnock game during the week, then every possibility that they can go into those games and turn around some of this negative perception of the team and the squad. As I said, full coverage of that Rangers AGM you can find over on our Patreon channel later today. We hope you can join us over there. Full coverage of the game at Dingwall at the weekend, also here on our YouTube channel later on this weekend. Whatever you end up doing, I hope you have a fabulous weekend, and I'll speak to you soon. Goodbye.